Thank you very much for coming out tonight, especially on a dreary evening. We know it's a busy time of year, and we know that you have a lot of other things you need to do, but this is very important, and your attendance tonight shows you're interested in our city, and we're very happy about that. Tonight's meeting is just the start of a process of vetting the issue. Nothing has been decided on yet. We have a lot of research to do, which includes your thoughts and comments and questions and from citizens like you. So thank you very much for coming. Oklahoma City officials encourage and welcome and appreciate your input. So right now I'd like to introduce Brett Weingard. He's the Assistant Director of the Utilities Department.
Thank you all very much for coming. My name is Brett Weingard, Assistant Director of the Utilities Department. We're going to try to speak up, but if I turn the mic up too much more, then we'll have feedback. So, as we discussed, our goal here is to make sure that you have an opportunity to provide input and that we can give you the facts on what has been proposed and the process that we go through at the City of Oklahoma City to evaluate these proposals like this. This is the second citizen meeting that we've had on this topic. Many of you I know have been at the earlier meeting we had back in 2011. We had a previous proposal and had a public meeting in the room adjacent to this building earlier on this same topic, where you were given the opportunity to ask your questions and talk about this once before, and we had taken that input into consideration at that time. The process that we have here is we see citizen input, and like we said a number of times here, and if this proposal goes forward from here, it would go to the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust, at which time there would be an opportunity for further public input and involvement in that process. And the trust meets usually on the first and third Tuesdays of each month in the City Council chambers. If they approve something, then it would go forward from there to the City Council that meets on Tuesday mornings at 8:30 at City Council. So there will be opportunities for you to have multiple opportunities to talk about this, to provide your input, and learn about these proposals and the deliberations that those boards and commission councils would take care of as they go through the process. At this time, I'd like to introduce Tim Allendorf with Pedestal Oil so that he can provide you with information about the proposal that they've received, or that we've received, and what their proposal is. And after that, then I will come back and talk to you about if the proposal was adopted and there was oil and gas minerals retrieved, what the trust would do with those funds. And I'll come back at a later time and talk about that after he gets an opportunity to speak. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tim. Oh, you want to go ahead and come on up.
My name's not Tim. My name is David Singer. I'm the president of Pedestal Oil Company. Thank you all for being here tonight. My father and uncle formed Pedestal Oil Company as an operating company in the early 1970s. The oil well you see, if any of you are familiar with the area at Penn and Effner, it's in the middle of the shopping center. It was drilled by my father in the middle 1970s. We have a history of operating oil and gas wells that date back to the 1940s. As my grandfather and his uncle came to this country from Russia in 1913 and landed in Oklahoma and began living the American dream, earning a living in the junk business initially. In 1988, Pedestal became the largest operator in the city limits of Edmond by virtue of a purchase from Apache Corporation. I've got people that are telling me that they can't hear me in the back. Can you hear? Doing the best I can.
about green.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. In 1988, Pedestal Oil Company became the largest operator in the city limits of Edmond by virtue of a purchase from Apache Corporation. We operate wells in some very highly dense populated neighborhoods, and I'm proud to say we have an impeccable safety record. We have operated in the city limits of Mustang, Newcastle, the Village, Oklahoma City, and others without incident. I personally enjoy the use of Lake Hefner.
No, but we don't really care about the history.
I personally enjoy the use of Lake Hefner, and my home backs up to the lake where I enjoy the beautiful environment that has been created here by our city leaders. You will hear information tonight that I hope will alleviate your concerns. My family, employees at Pedestal appreciate the value of the lake as we use the walking, running trails and other features around the lake just like everyone else here tonight. If we thought there was any chance whatsoever of doing harm to the environment, to the lake, to the water supply, we wouldn't be having this meeting. We wouldn't be seeking to drill a well on the Lake Hefner Reservation. Energy independence is now within the grasp of the American people thanks to technologies of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracture stimulation techniques. There is much misinformation regarding fracture stimulation.
Why now?
After you have an opportunity to hear from our engineer, Tim Altendorf, and from Wayne Smith, I am certain you will be better educated. I understand that this doesn't necessarily translate to winning everybody's approval, but it is important to know the facts. I've never been more proud to call myself an Oklahoma Cityan, and the roots of my family now span 6 generations here in our great state. The oil and gas business dovetails hand in glove with the history of our state, and even today has an overwhelming influence on our state and federal budgets as gross production taxes rise and fall with oil and gas prices. I believe this project we have proposed will benefit the city of Oklahoma City, the members of the community, and help improve and make enhancements to the Lake Hefner Reservation that will benefit all of us who enjoy it.
Yeah, let's hope the dam holds.
So, we have Councilman Shadid here. Did you want to say anything?
My comments were really primarily to talk about how important it is, to stay calm and listen. But I am right now just overwhelmed, unfortunately, by how we have failed you as a city. It is breaking my heart that there are so many people who came out and are locked out of this meeting because we capped it at 134. We knew several days ago that hundreds of people were going to come to this meeting. There was no notification. I am heartbroken that they are out there in the cold. Many of us came 3 years ago and we heard a presentation. It was very clear that we were opposed to it. 3 years went by, we heard nothing, and now with 1 week's notice, that's fine. The passion that people have for the water in the neighborhood and Lake Hefner is very obvious. Why are we having it in this conservatory? There's a room right over there that's 5, 6, 7 times as big. It is breaking my heart that those people have come out there, they're trying to do their civic duty, and this is how we're treating them as a city. Now, after we are where we are, we have failed them. And I guess we're going to have a second meeting here after they stay in the rain for an hour. I think we should maybe have another town hall meeting.
After the holidays.
Yes, we just met 2 weeks ago on the comprehensive plan. We had 300 people. It was very civil, it was very constructive, very educational. Let's have another one where we have objective scientists who come and present to the people, and we have plenty of room and everybody can hear it, and it's well planned and lots of notification. That's what we need to maximize public deliberation and transparency, not this. This is part of it. Now, we've been dealt the hand that we've been dealt. My daughter's here, she's video recording it, and we're going to put it on the internet. We're going to let everybody who couldn't be here or who's out in the rain, and we'll put it on the internet so they will be able to see it. Let's process. Nothing's going to be decided tonight. Nothing's going to be decided tonight. There are two bodies that this proposal would have to pass in order for it to be implemented. The first would be the 5 people on the Water Utilities Trust. That's Councilman Pete White, Councilman Pat Ryan, City Manager Jim Couch, Cody Graves, and Carl Edwards. If it passed that body, it would then go to the City Council, and it would have to get 5 out of 9 votes, and 1 is already gone. So, that being said, it would have to pass both of those, so no decisions could be made tonight. So what I would propose, as frustrating as this is, and as heartbreaking as it is, and as much fear as there is, and maybe a lot of that gets translated into anger, let's listen for the remainder of their presentation. And let's try not to talk over one another. Let's not let anger get away from us. Let's just hear what they have to say. It's all being recorded. We don't have to punch holes, whatever holes are going to be punched in it tonight. Let's hear the proposal. It's all being recorded, and then let's regroup. Let's have our questions answered tonight. Then let's regroup, formulate a well thought out policy positions, and hear from other experts in the weeks and hopefully months ahead. But for the remainder, let's try and deal with the hand that's been dealt with us, and let's not talk over one another. Let's not yell at them. Let's remain calm, and let's hear the proposal, and then we can move forward. With that, whoever's going to speak next. I think there's going to be time for questions at the end, but we'll let the next presentation move forward. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, at this time we'll have Tim come and give you a presentation concerning the proposal. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Say, my name is Tim Altendorf. I'm a registered professional engineer, graduated in mechanical engineering in 1979 from Oklahoma State University.
Now we can't hear that. You work for the oil.
I worked for Pedestal Oil, graduated in 1979 with a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering from OSU. I received my registered professional engineer registration in 1986. I worked for Pedestal Oil Company for 29 years. I would consider myself an expert since all I've done since I started in the oil patch. Ever since I got out of school, I've worked as far as drilling is concerned. What I want to do is I'll go through this as quickly as I can, but the reason that the south side of Lake Hefner's perspective is because when Lake Hefner was put in, it was built around several huge oil fields. One was to the west, the Great West Edmond Field. There was one to the north, one to the south. And so basically the lake itself impeded further development from the west and from the north. And basically there could be a substantial amount of hydrocarbon underneath the lake, and being that the city is a royalty owner, they would share in the benefits of any production from that, and for what they would use improvements for the reservoirs. Now, as far as the permitting is concerned, or when we approach the city about this, I'd like to go over this right over here. Okay, here we go. One of the main restriction is that anytime you drill within on Oklahoma City Water Trust property, that you cannot put a well any closer than 660 feet from the shoreline. And so what you see here, there is a stamp, there is an area here that is a minimum of 660 feet from here, from the north, from the east, from the west, and from the south.
Which shoreline you mentioned from?
The closest shoreline to where it would be right here, right over here,
High water line?
right over here, the high water line. That is correct.
Ooh, it never goes that high.
So the location itself I know the people that live in the neighborhood association. If you go to Portland and Lake Hefner Road, if you go west maybe about 220 yards, that's the entrance, and that would be the access road. Right here is Portland, come over to here, that would be the access road to the location. Go approximately 50 yards to the north, and that would be the entrance into the actual drilling site, if it was permitted to be there. The location size would be 300 by 375 feet. It would accommodate an initial well, and if it was successful and the city was happy about it, then we would drill 5 additional wells from that pad. As far as the sequence of events are concerned, you still have to go through Aqua, you still have to go through the city council for a surface use agreement, for a lease agreement, with the drilling permits as well. So, and there's 3 layers: the state regulations, the city regulations, and Aqua regulations. If you can't do that, you cannot drill there. It's very stringent. The next thing I'd like
Proximity to the wetland area just to the south of there. What about the proximity to the wetland area just to the south of there that's directly connected to the water supply? What is the distance and proximity
660 feet.
to the wetland area just to the
Yes.
south of there?
Yes.
No, that's the shoreline.
Yes. I mean,
Those are the water trust rules.
okay, I'll just take this off and talk like this. Some of the issues that I know that the neighborhood association wanted me to address were these protective measures. And as I mentioned, the city has different ordinances than the state. They're more restrictive, and Aqua even ramps it up a notch. As far as protective measures are concerned, the entire surface location would be surrounded by a dike of 2 foot tall and by 300 foot by 375 foot, a volume of approximately 40,000 barrels equivalent to water. That's 1.3 million gallons of water. That is what that location would hold, and anything that would go in there would have to go up a ramp and go down a ramp. Any water that was to rain into that area would have to be pumped out and hauled off. So also you have to make a provision that nothing can flow into it. So as far as the protective measures are concerned, the city code says that you must have a sufficiently high fence that will keep humans and animals out. And because I'm I am a runner, and I run around the lake. I know there's a lot of skunks on the south side, and I want those out of there. But anyway, that's the situation about the fencing. It would be locked at all times, and I would presume that we would have to have some additional security measures as well, like security cameras, in the event that we actually did do this project. Again, I mentioned about the 4-sided berm. That would be, again, 40,000 barrels, and then there would be a secondary berm that would be between the well site and the lake. It would have an outlet in it so that during normal operating, while we're operating and things are okay, and it rains, the rainwater could go out, very similar to what you see on new developments where they put little retention ponds in shopping centers and things to collect the water so it doesn't cause a problem later on. If for some reason there was a leak and it reached over 40,000 barrel capacity of the well site itself, leak down, it'd be a secondary containment pond there. You could shut the valve and then you could go ahead and commence your emergency procedures. As far as the spill contingency plan, usually when you develop a spill contingency plan, a lot of times it has to do with production facilities when you produce oil, gas, and salt water. And that is something that the EPA requires. It's called spill prevention, control, and countermeasure. When a company like Devon or us drill a well, there are certain measures you take into account when you drill, and you have some localized spill prevention on the drill site itself. But Aqua we'll have to have another spill prevention plan that is in detail in the event that if there is a problem in the area, or a spill, that there's a way to detect it and a way to notify the appropriate people so that it can be taken care of. Now, as far as noise is concerned, I know there's people who's concerned about the noise, and yes, when you move a drilling rig in, it usually takes 2 days to move one in and move one out. And you will hear some additional noise on those days of trucks coming and going. After that, noise will be greatly diminished. And as far as the actual drilling operations are concerned, if you've been over in that area to the south, that neighborhood to the south is about, those houses are about 1,400 feet away, which is about 3/4 of the way from driving from Portland over here to this facility, and which is still a pretty good walk. But if you go out there and the people that live there, you walk up that hill, and then as you get to the south side of Lake Hefner, it drops off about 10 feet, and then you go across the road and where the drill site would be north of the running track, and basically you have a pretty decent buffer to prevent the noise from going to the south because of where it's located. The other thing that we would probably do is from spring through fall, you can get this offline, the United States Department of Agriculture, that the predominant wind direction in Oklahoma is south, southeast, south, southwest, majority of that time. And so if we drill the well during that point in time, the majority of the noise would be dispersed and go across Lake Hefner, which is over 2 miles in length. So where this is located, I don't anticipate there being a lot of noise involved unless it's with the move in and move out of the drilling rig. As far as the access roads are concerned, what we're going to have to do there is the road that's in there right now at Hobie Point, it's in good shape and condition, but we're going to have to make sure that it stays that way during drilling operations. And so it'll have to be repaired and taken care of. And that, well, I don't see that being an issue. As far as mud being out on the road, it's a very fine silted pressure run that's on there now. So if it rains and trucks are coming and going, and you might see a film of white material out on the road, but it's so fine, I don't think that's going to pose any issues. As far as the walking and biking trail is concerned, if you go out there and take a look at that, this is the trail itself that crosses. This is the access road that goes north into Hobie Point. We will tear out the running trail, and then we will replace it and repair it so that's in better condition now. This will be done beforehand. It's in better condition than it is now because it's all cracked up and messed up. And we'll also make sure it's put into city specs, and that it will also accommodate the heavy roads that heavy trucks that go through there to the well site.
That's a narrow road. Where the trucks coming in? Drilling trucks are not small.
No, they aren't, but we've been in a lot tighter situation than that. As far as the walking and biking trail is concerned, one other thing that we propose to do is that at this point here, we'll put some stop signs, north, south, east, west, and we will man a person here, basically a crossing guard during the duration of the drilling. He will stand right here, and if someone is running along the path, he can direct the people either to stop, or the cars or the trucks that might be moving in there to help prevent there being any accident. Runners do use iPods and iPhones, and they may be thinking about other things, and same thing with people driving. But there will be somebody manned here 24 hours a day.
Just during the drilling, or is that?
That'd be during the drilling operations.
What about where they're removing the product, the oil and gas, and the trucks coming in now?
Well, there'll be gate, there'll be security, but there won't be people manning that at that point in
Are
time.
they gonna feel like you do? Are the wells are not even that close to our houses? If they're not even that close, and we feel earthquakes on a daily basis. I think last year, almost daily.
What happens
Yes,
to an earthquake?
we got insurance, we got earthquake insurance, or earthquake, so our insurance went up, thanks to you. And I'm sure, you know, the.
Ma'am, what we'd like to do is have you please honor the process we have of not talking over the people that are trying to make a presentation. All we want to do is make sure that everyone has an opportunity to hear what the presentation is.
Well,
We
bring
have
the real
cards for each
concerns to your
person, and
presentation. Like earthquakes.
we're going to go through the questions.
By a dam.
As soon as we get done, if you can honor the process, please, and allow us to make the presentation so that you can hear what he has to say. Thank you.
The next thing I'd like to talk about is the road restorations. After we conclude the drilling operations, we will actually be from the entrance of South Lake Hefner right down to the running path. That will be all a new entrance, completely taken out and reinstalled to city specs with curb and gutter. Even though there's not a curb and gutter, we'll do what they want us to do there. If we damage the running trail, we'll go ahead and replace it as well. In addition to that, we'll go ahead and pave in asphalt approximately 75 to 100 yards of this trail. It's all done. If the wells are dry hole or it's a producer, it has to be done. As far as the beautification plan is concerned,
Why would you pick a recreational lake, water supply?
With our drinking water.
No recreational lake.
Once again, I'd like to ask you please to sit down and let the person complete the presentation. Thank you.
We don't have all night, and we'd like to have our questions answered.
Ma'am, I'd like for you to comply and please keep quiet so we can make the presentation. Thank you. Wow.
as far as beautification is concerned, after the wells are drilled and we put the fence up, we will get with the city, and this is an example of one over in Midwest City where they put the site-proof fence up and they went ahead and planted the trees around it, and it's pretty nice. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at this fencing, this is very similar to the tennis courts that are right over here in this park. It's pretty much the same.
This is post-completion, is that what you're saying?
That's post-completion, yes, sir.
Make it shake so it's realistic.
Then as far as the performance bond is concerned, that's basically a bond that we have to post, that basically if we do not repair the running track, we do not install the new entrance, we do not pave the access road, and we do not repair South Lake Hefner Drive, we'll have to take pictures or a moving picture whichever way the city wants us to come in there. I'm sure it will not be on Portland. And we'll have to take pictures of everything, and then after we are finished with drilling and completion operations, we'll go back with the city, we'll look at anything that's been damaged and has to be repaired.
Look at that, about the blue sky, those trees and everything.
So basically, that's the end of my presentation as far as the protective measures are concerned.
Sir,
I
concerning the noise, as a resident of the neighborhood, my concern is, what's the contingency plan if your calculations are off? With the community.
Sir, this is not the time for that. Please keep quiet so we can let him finish the presentation.
What I'd like to do right now is,
We're going to turn it over to Wayne Smith. Wayne Smith is part of their team and has a few things to say.
I've asked Wayne. Wayne is also a professional engineer. He got his degree from OU and is a registered petroleum engineer.
I know most people are concerned about the safety aspects of oil and gas drilling, but you need to understand that, well, it's all part of oil and gas exploration.
Different kind.
And please understand that with the regulations that are in place within the city of Oklahoma City, they are very restrictive. They were placed in effect many years ago. As a matter of fact, the oil and gas ordinance for Oklahoma City started in the 1930s.
And it's still there.
And this operation is to be conducted in a very safe manner according to the regulations as they are in effect. And don't know how many of you are even aware, in 1995 there were several wells drilled on the north side of Lake Hefner.
North, not Watershed.
In the Bluff Creek area. There are 7 wells in that location already. They've been there, they've been producing without incident. They were drilled. Apparently have some unguided misconceptions about hydraulic fracturing.
Yeah.
The state of New York has banned all fracking in the state of
What
New
you
York.
have to understand is that there are regulations in place, not only from the local, the state, and the federal level. And that is the way that the systems are designed. It's a safe process. It's used to enhance.
Is that why New York banned it? Is that why New York banned it?
Ma'am, wait for the presentation. You must be willing to listen. So thank you for listening. What you are looking at is a proposal to drill some wells in an area that is undeveloped. It is undeveloped not only from the surface, it is undeveloped from subsurface. And to allow for the development of the subsurface, you have to have access. It just happens that this particular chosen
Sir,
site
I was a geophysicist, and I understand
falls
too.
within the regulations, and it is allowable at that site. As part of the oversight, at one time, I was the regulator for Oklahoma City. And enforced these rules. And at the time that the wells were drilled on the north side of Lake Hefner, we implemented the rules, saw to it that they were adhered to, and they're a good, safe process.
You used to be a regulator for Oklahoma City, and now you work for Pedestal. What are the odds?
Those of you who have come to Oklahoma from other parts of the country are not going to have the same thought processes and ideas that those of us that live here. This is a
I've lived in my home a half block from Portland since 1977.
Let us finish.
And you think I'm not scared?
There are a multitude of wells in that area already. In Oklahoma County, there are over 7,000 wells in Oklahoma County. The drilling was started in the early 1900s. The processes that were used in the early 1900s are not the same as they're done today. The safeguards, the safety aspects, the well construction to protect the environment is not the same that it was 50 years ago. Even in the last 10 years, the environmental safeguards have changed exponentially. They've gone tremendously more restrictive, and the way that well sites are constructed virtually eliminates the contamination risk. This is a short-term process. The drilling operation takes from 14 to 20 days. The rig is in there, it's out, it's gone. And as far as the noise parts of it, there are ordinances in place for noise levels. The city has people who are trained with noise systems to enforce those regulations. So with the advent of sound walls, the time of the year for the wind, very little sound will actually get away from that site.
Why does that have to be developed? Why can't it stay the way it is?
Should I address your question?
No, you don't want to address anything. Just tell us how pretty it's going to be.
The operation is one that is very scientifically sound and is very beneficial from a revenue standpoint to the citizens of Oklahoma City, because the property produces a revenue stream that will go directly back into redevelopment of the systems and the facilities that the city has. It's not uncommon. If you look at Will Rogers Airport and many of the parks, they all have oil revenues associated with them, and it's very beneficial to the city. The access to and from that site just to kind of step back on it a little bit. There are state rules, there are city rules that affect the loads that go in and out. It's highly regulated. And so being able to operate under those regulations is difficult for oil companies, and most of the companies really try to be good neighbors, good citizens, and to benefit the overall citizenry of the state.
Thank you.
How condescending and insulting you were. Your arrogance is insulting.
All right. The next part of our presentation is for me to speak briefly on what happens to the money should the oil and gas actually be found, should they do this. Okay? So, in Oklahoma City, we have a water and wastewater utilities department. All of us are city employees. We support the trust, the water trust operations that pays the debt service on the capital improvements, construct the capital improvements, and provide the water and sewer service for all the citizens in the metro area. That is funded from water and sewer payments from the bills that people pay. Recreational improvements on the reservations, at the lakes, at Atoka, at Overholser, at Draper, and at Hefner, those improvements to those recreational activities, the grant local share match funds that Aquit contributes when grants are sought out for boat ramps or for trails or parking lots, those kinds of things. The funds from those come from non-ratepayer fund sources, not from the water sewer payments on the bills. Non-ratepayer fund sources are things like oil and gas revenues, where we have exploration that has occurred on trust properties. They come from the wet and dry stall fees when people park their boats in the wet and dry stalls at the lakes. From leases that we have on properties like out at West Elm Creek where people use for grazing cattle and things. Off-road vehicle permits at Draper. We have East Wharf for the payments for the activities that are there to fund these improvements. So in this situation, if there is any oil and gas revenues created from this, they've already been pre-designated many years ago to non-ratepayer funded activities. If you look at the children's playground south of East Wharf, the new road that was put in and parking area that was put in for the playground for the children, that was funded from non-ratepayer funding sources like East Wharf leases, oil and gas revenue leases. So all these improvements that you see at the lakes come from those very sources. Just like if this happened, the funds were already designated 100% to those types of activities. And we have something called a non-ratepayer capital improvement program of items that citizen groups that recreate at the lakes have participated in expressing what they would like to see occur at the lakes. And a lot of those things are unfunded at this time because we do not have enough non-ratepayer funding sources to fund those improvements. So as we get those done, we save up money for years, we save up money and we do those improvements. So that's how that program works. So I want to make sure you understood that. And at this time, what we have next is a question and answer period where we have questions that have been brought forth. And I think, Lisa, we need to get the questions.
Has there been any proposed revenue share on the lease? The city, what's the percentage of the lease? The city would get?
21%.
21%?
You just made a case to tell us that you're biased on this program or this proposal.
What about the water for the fracking? Is that being talked about tonight, where that's coming from?
Okay, so hi. I'm Marcia Slaughter, I'm the Utilities Director for Oklahoma City. I took your notes, some of them are, many of you made comments, we respect that, and we'll record those as well, but there weren't particularly questions. So what we'll do is I found a few clear questions. One of them is about the water that's used in the drilling process, and we'll ask Pedestal for that. But first, I answered the question about what percentage, that's 21%. I have a question about drilling on wetlands. The places where we'll be drilling are not wetlands, straight up. I appreciate that it's a lake.
It seems to me that you aren't listening to our questions now, and you may not have listened. You may not listen to what we have submitted to you either.
Amen. What is your question?
So, look, hi. Isn't this a beautiful place?
We love beauty, that's why we don't want the wells.
Last time we had a meeting, there were 20. So.
Does anyone do about it? Yeah, that'd help. I found out about it yesterday. And I live a half block from Portland. And I am scared. Hell no, I don't.
We sent messages to people who came to the previous meeting and to presidents.
So people would not show up.
Yes.
Okay, let's be transparent about it.
Are you going to address some of the questions?
I am. Is anybody going to give you a chance to talk?
Well, why don't you go ahead with one of the questions and answer it, and maybe we can get along with it.
Questions and answers.
Okay, noise ordinances. Yes, noise ordinances apply. They are site-specific in some cases. There'll be measurements taken. We'll use measurements from past drilling operations. And again, there are additional rules for lake properties.
Start calling and emailing the mayor and the water utilities.
Traffic management. Traffic management. You asked questions about driver safety, who's going to drive the trucks, and how many truck loads it will take. I'm going to turn that over to Pedestal in a minute, along with the question about how much water is used. An additional question that I think I can answer for you is about lake protection. The requirements of the Water Trust regulations for drilling operations on their land are for the drilling operation to be diked. In this case, we'll be putting in multiple dikes
They
to
already
protect.
talked about that.
You keep saying it like past tense, like it's already been approved. I thought it had not been approved.
Something goes wrong.
Mike, it isn't approved yet. I've seen a couple of emails from you. Nice to meet you. No, it's not approved. I think you've already heard about the approval process. You know that it's multiple layers. You know that what we're doing is vetting the issue, finding out from citizens what they're interested in. Because we knew we would have so many citizens, we asked you to fill out forms. We gave you cards and we gave you a form. Some of you have done that, others of you haven't. Please do continue to complete those forms. We're making a list. We have a list of about 100 individual emails with questions. We're developing answers to those questions. We put some information in response to your questions. We put some information online at fkc.gov about the proposal itself and about the drilling regulations that are required. Yes, sir. Wait, I got a question. I'm going to take questions one at a time.
My question to you on my card was, how much water will be required, and where will that water come from?
Pedestal?
Usually when you drill a well, if you're out in the
question, could you repeat it?
Yeah, he wanted to know where the water comes from when you drill a well. When you're out in a rural area, usually you negotiate with the landowner and...
Where will this water...
Well, let me get to it, please, okay? Let me get to it, all right? When you're out in a rural area, you usually negotiate with a landowner, and he's got enough in his pond, he will sell it to you. Or you drill a water well, and you use the water, and that's a negotiated thing with the landowner, and then you give him the well, because many times they need a water well and they can't afford to drill it themselves. As far as you municipalities are concerned, what we've done in the past is we buy it from the city. In Edmond, we go ahead and buy it from the city. It doesn't come out of Lake Hefner. Usually you go buy a flush meter from a fire hydrant, just like the people do when they go ahead and put in roads and all. So that's it.
How much water is required approximately?
I'd say probably several thousand barrels of water. I'm just explaining how usually where the water comes from.
Yes, sir. In front.
Ma'am, my name's Jack White, and at one time I was director of finance for the state of Oklahoma.
Nice to see you.
I understand something about bidding. This appears to be a sole source operation. Have you considered, if you want to have it drilled, have you considered sending out bids and letting different operating companies propose?
So John's question is about bidding. Seems to be a sole source proposal. Here's what the Water Trust does when it gets unsolicited proposals, which is what this is. The staff takes those proposals to the Water Trust and says, do you want us to pursue this? Don't you want us to pursue this? They told us we could pursue it to figure it out. That's where we are. Now they did that 3 years ago. Excuse me, I'm taking individual, the lady in the hat.
How many people depend on this water for food, for drinking?
About 100,000.
How many?
About 100,000.
So we're 100,000 people are susceptible to anything that can happen, will happen, Murphy's Law. So there's thousands of people that
Personally, I think you have a much greater risk of the trucks that drive over the top of the dam. But that's my opinion as an environmental engineer. The man behind the lady.
Does the Water Utilities Trust have an official position on the proposal?
No.
Because it seems as though, just from me standing here, there's a lot of questions that are being asked of the experts that are providing information. Understand this is not an official meeting. You guys called this as an informational meeting and more of a presentation. So I believe that the expectation of this meeting was not exactly what you intended it for it to be. But it seems as there's some very educated, well-educated people that have informed questions. Those questions are being posed to the experts that are giving their presentations. Those experts are either choosing not to answer or they're not being allowed to answer. To answer the one question that I had, which was the Water Utilities Trust does not have a position on the proposal at this time. However, will there be a time where these people who are involved in this process, from Pedestal, from the engineering group, from the Water Utilities Trust, will be available to the general public for a informed, extended length Q&A period where these people, my daughter and I do not live up here. We travel from Southmore and ride Lake Hefner 3-4 times a week. It's the only place in the city that we can go other than up and down the river where we can ride our bikes and not be worried about cars. Okay? It's a great place. The city has done phenomenal work to make this area safe for runners and cyclists away from automobiles. It's phenomenal. I am not an anti-fracking guy. I'm safe with it. I know that that's probably the minority in this room. I don't believe that the fracking issue I'm not worried about it. However, the possibility, although very small for contamination, the potential is so large, there's just some places that you don't do this. But back to my question, will there be a Q&A where we can ask questions and the experts will actually answer them?
Because we're getting a lot of questions in through the internet. We're compiling those and getting some questions some answers pulled together.
But then
will there
you're
be
able to pick and choose those questions.
Will there be? No, actually, I have to answer all of them. I don't know what you think the public process is, but that's what I think it is. Now, I'm going to summarize some of those because I think many of you are asking the same question multiple times in different forms. We'll figure out how to do that, and you can tell me once we get those done, and that's why we asked you for the forms. Once we get those done and that round of information pulled together, then come back and see some
So you
more.
are
through their-
required to answer. You are required to answer every question that's asked.
It's either yes or no. It's either yes or no.
Yeah, he'll be here presently. So the lady in black.
My question to Councilman Shadid, why can't this issue be put on a public ballot? So many people are impacted.
Yeah, let us vote.
So there's a process for that. We'll get that information up on the web. And the lady that,
Yeah, we voted for maps.
I have two questions. If this affects the neighborhoods, all the neighborhoods around the lake are 50+ years old. The piping for the water that comes into our neighborhoods flows every year. So within that, are they going to subsidize us for any issues that happen within our water space? And if our property value goes down, is that going to be subsidized as well?
so I saw the email about earthquake damage. No.
I didn't ask about earthquake damage.
She did. Water pipes? No. Water pipes are my problem.
She asked about property value.
Water pipes are our
You
problem.
didn't answer my question.
Okay, try again.
Try again? Okay. Within our space, the neighborhood surrounding the lake, we drill, and when there are issues within the water coming into our neighborhoods, our piping is 50+ years old. We have water issues every year, pipes are over. So with this happening, and water's going to be diverted for the drilling, which will affect our neighborhoods, will we be subsidized for the issues that we incur in our space?
Okay, so you're making a connection between the pipes in your house.
No, the water pipes coming to our home.
Okay, the pipes between the pipes from in the street or in your yard.
Water line from Scott House. The city. Your water line, your council.
Yeah, yeah, those are my problem. That's correct. Those are my problem.
But it becomes my problem when the pipes are blowing in my neighborhood and my property value goes down. It's my problem and your problem.
So pipe repair is made through a capital program and the American Water Works Association sets standards for replacement of pipes, which we follow. That mean if you start to see more breaks than is the national standard, we start replacing mains, and that happens fairly quickly. Sometimes mains deteriorate quickly. I have not seen grave problems in your neighborhood. I've seen a couple of places with hot spots from aggressive soils near your neighborhood.
The water pressure is higher because we are closer to the water source. The water pressure is higher going into our neighborhoods, and our pipes flow more often than outside of higher water pressure.
I'm going to ask your engineering manager about the pressure.
My second question
I got it.
is, if we don't want this to happen, how do we make sure it doesn't happen?
Well, you continue to participate in the process.
What is your process to make sure this is as intended?
So,
Your employee who wants you to stop it. What's your process to make sure this doesn't happen?
to make sure your water pipes don't break? Your process as a citizen is to participate as you are doing now and to follow the process.
To make sure that us as citizens make sure that this doesn't happen in our neighborhood. What is your process?
That's not my goal is to vet the request. My goal is to get to an answer. My job is to get to an answer. My job is not to deny or approve.
Ms. Slaughter, when would they vote? Maybe that'd be easier. When would you vote?
So how do we vote this month?
When would the Water Resource Board vote?
The Water Utilities Trust, we don't know when they'll vote. We are collecting information at this time. It's a public process. If you set yourself up on the internet to get information about the Water Trust in this item, I know for a fact you can have it delivered to yourself and keep yourself appraised, okay? Yes.
I was just wondering, so you're collecting information that says on here we have until the 22nd to give information. Why such a short time span if there's going to be time?
You got to start answering questions at some point. Well, look, I have 100 questions so far, plus all the ones that I've heard tonight, some of which are different, some of which, and some of you have seen your names on email, so I thank you for being willing to stick out the process. And given I have 100 questions already, it seems to me I could get to 250 or 300 by next Monday and start rolling out answers so that you can either ask me more questions or refine the questions or determine a new issue that you want to talk about. It's about, that's why.
How and when will those questions be answered? So if we submit all the questions, when will those be answered?
We don't know yet. Some of them are going to,
That's fantastic planning.
some of them are going to be easily answered. Some of them will be easily answered and can roll out pretty quickly, like 21%. Some of them will take research and additional information.
And on research, are you all, you do know that New York banned fracking yesterday?
Yes.
Are you aware of that? Have we done anything to find out what they did years and years of study. Have we contacted them to find out about their study, or what studies are you doing on that?
I'm collecting information. So, yes.
We've had earthquakes in Oklahoma City.
Under the presumption that Pedestal has provided an actual proposal, documentation, and guidelines that they have proposed to implement this plan?
Yes, the 2012 proposal is on the web at ekc.gov.
Okay, that was what I wanted to know. Is that comprehensive with what they provided to the Water Trust?
That's what we have so far.
And do they intend to provide any other further details regarding such things as their details on their spill containment plans or technical specs on those actual guidelines on what they plan to do about building this noise buffer with materials, any kind of engineering program, blueprints?
Yeah, they have to. It's a part of the deal.
Will those be made available to the public prior to any city meeting?
All actions requested of the Water Trust are public information, and as such are provided ahead of time. I understand that you're looking for information further in advance, and we will accommodate, we'll do everything we can to make sure we accommodate that.
Will that information be posted on the website, or do we need to actually make an actual request for the Water Trust to provide those?
No, that's okay. We'll put, I see no way out of this except to post everything that on the web, don't you? Yes.
Hi, Dave Lindo, OKC Kayak. We've met many times before. We've had leases within 100 yards of the proposed site for kayaking and paddle sport related activities, SUP, stand-up paddleboard. My concern is the lack of transparency in the process. Could you speak to what other sites that potentially Lake Hefner or other city lake reservations are in consideration for this, and what those talks might be, or what limits we're going to put on, are we going to have one oil well at Lake Hefner? Are we going to allow two? Are we going to have to allow 6 of these things? With directional drilling technology, why is it not being proposed for a private pad site somewhere else that can reach 5 miles underneath Lake Hefner? The city would still receive royalties, and seems like a better solution than permanently ruining the aesthetic value of the lake for paddlers, for bikers, for runners, for everybody.
We'll return to that and put that information on the web. In the structure.
The postage stamp area that's surrounded 360 degrees by areas that are prohibited from doing any drilling. And he pointed to a couple of areas that would be like a secondary berm and other construction. And of course, state law prohibits you from building any kind of structure within that 660 feet, except specifically for the environmental protection of the water resource. Now, I don't know how you think you're getting around that.
So, we'll look at the water supply map, but so here's the deal. Lake Hefner has a dam at the north end, right? We all know that. At the south end, it was a creek. So lots of little fingers in the creek. When they built the lake, they built a diversion system around the lake so that all water that comes in above what was considered the normal lake level is diverted and goes east and north around the lake. That was, at the time, the thing that people did to protect from things like oil spills from cars, from trucks. Those of you who've seen our solid waste trucks and how they can be gooey sometimes know exactly what I mean. So going back to the point, 250 feet by 350 feet is the proposed site. It is between the protective waterway and that captures the drainage and the maximum water level in the lake. It's a little postage stamp. It's an option. That's why we're here, is because it's a possible option. Go ahead.
Does all the chemicals and the water from drilling, especially from fracking, does that not go back into or have the potential to enter the water table?
They're required under the aqua rules. Under the aqua rules, they're required to drill a specific distance underneath the water table to make certain that they avoid it. They drill with. Now, Pedestal, do you want to take this one on?
I'll try to explain on that. Anytime you start to drill a well, the first thing you have to do is protect the freshwater strata. So you talk to the state, and they give you the base of the treatable water. That is the longest distance that they consider that water can be treated, not drinkable water, but treatable water that you'd have to go through a purification system or some other chemical process to clean it up to drink. In this area, that depth is at 1,100 feet. So the very first thing you do when you drill the well, you have to set a protective casing at that depth to protect the freshwater strata. As far as the chemicals are concerned, anything that comes in the well comes out the well, goes into tanks, and then it's hauled off to a state permitted facility. It's not held or stored on location.
Okay, so you're asking me why he's not talking? It's because the Occupy people shut him out every time. So
Could we interrupt him?
Hello. Go ahead.
Can we put him on the microphone to answer his mic?
Yep. And it was?
Other proposed sites that are on the table?
We don't have any. This is it.
Lake reservation?
This is it. I'm sorry, there were the people who figured it out. There were the people who figured out about the oil and gas under that area. They individually figured out that that was a potential drilling site and brought it to us. We did not seek it out.
Is it not the proximity to the lake?
The question is why that site?
The reason that site was selected is because, again, as Mr. Smith said, back in 1995, a half dozen wells were drilled on the north side of the lake that produced 500,000 barrels of oil and 9 BCF of gas, all under strict code, all under aqua rules. They were drilled, and they're still producing right now. So basically, we contend that pool of hydrocarbon on the north side of the lake extends underneath the lake and actually comes to the south side.
Are those fracking wells? They're not.
All the wells that were drilled, completed, and produced on the north side of the lake were fracture stimulated. I don't believe, to my knowledge, any of the water has been contaminated as a result of those. Now, one thing somebody needs to understand is that when the depth that we'll be drilling to is about 6,700 feet. That's if there is a stimulation with fracture stimulation. We don't know if there is, because not all formations you drill through are candidates for fracture stimulation, and they're completely different the way you design a vertical well straight down as opposed to a horizontal well. You use a lot more fluid. So we can't say that that's going to happen. But if we're at 6,700 foot, which is like 1.3 miles deep, that's happening down 50 foot at the bottom of the hole, and it's not happening up at the surface or at the base of the lake.
How do we protect from earthquake activity? Because that's a given.
I guess the question there is whether, where we are in proximity to faults, known faults, or where the earthquakes are occurring right now, and also how that is happening.
They're all according to the Oklahoma Geological Society. They're all happening. If you look at the map, all of the earthquake activity are happening around wells that are fractured.
I don't know, I really don't know if I can answer that, but I can say that the wells were fracture stimulated on the north side, and there were no earthquakes at that time, or at least maybe they weren't detected at that time and nobody felt them. So to go ahead and generalize that because you fracture stimulate a well that's going to cause an earthquake, I don't think that's a fair assessment.
Tim, have you considered this with the injection wells?
There will be no injection wells. This is a different kind of formation. We don't anticipate producing a lot of water like you see up in the north part of the state, the Mississippi Play and the Woodford, where once you produce that water back, you either have to dispose of it in a disposal well or you haul it off to a state permitted well. This is a different kind of reservoir. It's called a solution gas drive. We anticipate oil and gas.
But in the southeast part of Oklahoma City, around Jones area, the earthquakes caused by injection, whether that was disposable water that was injected or fracking water, I don't know. But compare your operation to that incident of significant earthquake damage.
Okay, so you made a comment about earthquake damage. Is that something you can add?
As far as the wells are concerned, I don't know if I can make a comment on
Okay, well, it
those.
happened in Jones.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Question about the water and the amount of people that receive water from Lake Hector. Does your statistic of about 100,000, does that include businesses and interlocal city agreements?
100,000 people strictly from Lake Hector.
Is that residential or is that business?
That's everybody. Wait,
Is that all
there's a part
interlocal?
of Oklahoma City we cannot serve except from Lake Hefner. That's 100,000 people.
Ma'am.
No, I'm sorry. I need to go on and let some other people ask questions. Yeah.
Who pays for damages if earthquakes do cause damage to our houses? Who pays for damages if there's more potholes in the roads around the drilling site and people's cars get ruined? Who pays for damages if the well does seep out and pollute Lake Hefner? Who pays for that?
The operator pays for any leaks, hazard spill prevention response plan. It's an emergency process. It's an important part of any decision to drill. In fact, we haven't done it for 20 years. It means you guys haven't seen it. But the reality, yes, every well that operates in our system has a response plan associated with it, with emergency call numbers, and fortunately those calls are really, really rare. But it's a good question, and again,
If there is earthquake damage to our houses, who pays for it?
Like insurance.
I think we have to figure out where the earthquake comes from, and I don't have an answer for that. I don't think you guys do. So, you.
I'm a retired epidemiologist for the Department of Environmental Quality.
Hi, nice to meet you.
20 years that I've been working on all of the old sites, either that has been abandoned or that is still continuing through the record process. And I'll tell you, there's a contamination that is present after 40, 50 years without really doing anything on it. It's so vast, it's so enormous. And it is good because those sites are actually way out in the boondocks. There are no receptors other than the environment, other than the wild species. But here, you have human beings. Yes. And there are three specific things that you did not address, and I am so concerned. The first one is the air contamination issue that would be generated whenever you would drill it. You have addressed the water, you have addressed the soil contamination, but you have not addressed the air.
Yeah, I saw your
Because the air is actually going into the subdivisions and to the neighborhood. It might even go up to where we are living or where we're residing. That's another. And the main thing is the contaminants that are in this are highly carcinogenic. There is no threshold. Even if you would be there for 7 or 14 days, just one smell or sniff of benzene in 20 or in 15 or 20 years, you would develop cancer. And that is based on research. The second thing, is beautification. Is what you're going to do after you have done, and you're going to beautify it. It is just skin dip. There would still be contamination in the water. There would still be contamination on the land. You never had addressed it. You would just be fencing it. You would just be putting trees.
And security cameras.
And then the last thing is the safety aspects. You are proud to say that there are several or hundreds of wells that has been drilled, and we never know, and we never complain, and we're never there. Take note that during the time that this has been drilled on, there isn't any residences in that area. No one that would be able to know that they have to be present in this meeting and tell the whole community that this is wrong. You know, I would understand that you would be looking for some oil or some fracking or some other, but that's not the place.
Somebody else who has an answer question, doesn't have to be questions.
Is pedestal willing to disclose? Is pedestal willing to disclose the chemical composition of the fluid that they use? And if not, how can they guarantee that there's not going to be contamination in the water?
They have to tell us that it's a part of the. They have to tell us that it's a part of the final process. Yes, I don't know.
Everything's going to be disclosed. The exact composition, the percentage of all the chemicals used in the hydraulic fracturing.
To the extent that it's not proprietary, but we'll be able to get you an exercise.
Basically, when you fracture stimulate a well, you're required to disclose those chemicals, which we do disclose through a program called Frac Focus, and you can get online and you can see every one of those chemicals.
100%
disclosure. All of the chemicals, 100% disclosure.
Okay, so somebody else who hasn't asked a question. You? No, the lady behind you.
Yes, first I would like to say thank you for giving your tour. I live walking distance from the proposed fracturing site, and I've heard a lot of language being used as we don't think this will happen, or we don't have any research to back that. But there's a lot of research to back that. I mean, sure, maybe earthquakes come from fracking, maybe not, but we don't have. Shouldn't we do that research first before we create a site in the middle of the state?
We're starting the process.
Okay.
And the lady, I'm sorry, no, not you, the lady behind you. Yeah.
What we're all really concerned with is under the table, when we're all asleep, that a deal's gonna be made, and we're gonna be stuck with an enormous, horrible situation here. You say there's a process, this and the other, but up to this day, that process, all of a sudden, boom, there's a meeting at the last meeting in a small building, and they've already proposed it to the Water Resources Board.
So the proposal came in 2011. We had a meeting.
And it was,
I've lived here 8 years and I've never heard of that meeting.
I can't help you about that. We had a meeting with the neighborhood associations that are directly next to the site. It was not pursued at that time. They came back with some information in 2012. We've been looking at it. We have not done the science. We just looked at can it fit the basic requirements. That's why we're here, is we know it fits the basic requirements. We don't know that it fits all the requirements. And actually, we want to know what else you think, and I have some pretty good ideas about what that is. What else?
The Water Resources Board, who appoints the Water Resources Board?
And since it's the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust, and they are appointed by the mayor.
There's nothing on the website. We just looked. The trust is empty. There's nothing there.
They shouldn't be in charge.
As far as there being this clandestine done deal, I wrote that letter in 2011 and made that proposal, and it went away. And then I went ahead and contacted them again several months ago to see what the status of it was. They said, okay, well, if you really want to look at doing this, you're going to have to talk to the people, and they set up the neighborhood association meeting. In order for us to be able to do anything out there, Aquid and the city have to grant a surface lease and a lease agreement to lease their minerals. None of that has been done. So I don't have an agreement with them, they don't have an agreement with us.
The citizens, they want to be the ones to say yes or no, not a board or a group of people.
So I appreciate that you have many more questions. I also promised people that they could come in at 7 o'clock, and that would mean that I will have to ask if we can end. Please leave us your questions. You already know how to email us. And please let some other people come in from the cold and turn the presentation. And thank you very much for coming.
Please exit that way. Don't